Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream, we work on Django apps. We're working through a cloud migration, getting one of my projects over from Heroku to a new DigitalOcean setup, and we're going to continue on that tonight. So let's just get right into it. We've got the next task on this list here of the cloud migration. I want to convert the database that I'm using from Postgres to a SQLite database. The reasons for that are really around performance for my users, but also ease of management and frankly cost savings. The Heroku setup costs me like $10 a month for the database that I'm running on, and I can get rid of that whole expense if I convert it to SQLite and just have it as a file and rely on some file backups. This is doable for my app because I don't have a ton of data. My whole production database for this particular service is only around 37 megabytes. So it means we have a lot of opportunity here to take advantage of SQLite. It will give us plenty of write performance for the usage pattern that we have. So that's what's going on there. So we have to go through this process of getting good at converting from Postgres to SQLite. It's not as trivial as I thought it would be. I was hoping that I'd find some kind of tool that would say like, hey, if you've got a database, all you do is run it through this tool, and now you've got a SQLite database. And unfortunately, it's not that simple. I think there are some tools along the way, but I don't have experience with them. So we're going to go through that this evening as a preparation step for what we're going to do. What I'm not going to do is take my actual production database and try to convert that here. I don't want to leak that sensitive information. So we're going to do a little bit of setup here to get a working Postgres database, get the data out of the format that I think that Heroku provides. We will confirm that Heroku does provide that. I'm pretty sure that what they do is provide a logical a pg dump command, basically. And assuming that that's the case and we get a pg dump out of Postgres from Heroku, then we know that if we can do the same kind of conversion with a local Postgres database and do a pg dump from that and have a common dump file, which is a standard format for Postgres, then we can take that Postgres format, do the manipulation and convert it to SQLite and go from there. So that's the plan. Let's see how that goes. And if you have any questions, feel free, whoops, get out of here. I don't need to do that right now. Feel free to ask me before, and also just keep this little do behind us so we know what we're working on if you're coming in later. We're working from a cloud migration branch. I talked last time about how I don't want to do a bunch of work on the other main branch and keep it deployable for the Heroku version of the site. So that's the branch we're working from now. I don't know how much that will matter, but we'll play around it. So this is what I want to set up. Right now, we have in the app, this is the homeschool application that I have. We have somewhere a database set up, and you can see that it's pulling from DJ database URL, and it's pulling these attributes that are there. Notice that neither of those is a connection string though. So DJ database URL is trying to automatically create a database based off of a certain environment variable, and that environment variable should be, yeah, you can see it right here. So we've got database URL SQLite 3 for doing local development. But what I want to do is switch to a Postgres database and set that up so we can log in, create some data, play with it over there, and then use that to work from there. And thankfully, I've got this reminder. So previously on this project, I have had to do some Postgres debugging. That was one of the other disadvantages of the setup, is that for my local stuff, I was doing SQLite, which is how I know the application will likely work with SQLite. But then when I would do some Postgres things, there were a couple of differences here and there, and so I needed a separate setup. So I've left this around as a way to do testing of this, of having a Docker Compose setup that will have our database, and then we'll connect to it via this database URL, which should be exposed over a local port here. That's how this is going to go. So let's fire things up and see how they go. Over here, I think the first step is let's convert this to this, so we actually have the image available. And we will continue to use a volume mount of .app. We're not really messing with code too much this time. We really want the app to do its thing. Excuse me. So we've got the database up, and we should be able to say Docker Compose up. At that point, the web app will actually be pointing at what will it be pointing at? It will be pointing at SQLite. So, but let's go ahead and get it downloaded while we're letting it go. So we'll need to get the app running and keep the database running. Use a SQLite parameter, database URL that actually maps to Postgres, and then be able to actually do the migrations on that, and then run the app locally, populate it with some data, and then run some other commands that will allow us to get the data out using some. I don't know if we'll have to use PG utilities or if we will do something else here, but we'll see. And if you have any questions about this whole process, why I'm doing this, feel free to ask. That's what I'm here for. And for as I leave in my comment for Python, Django, or other web development questions. So while that's downloading, let's start to set up this. I think I need to put on my secrets here because the env file has some stuff in it, but I'm going to take this line right here and I'm going to paste it in the other file. So switch over. I'm going to go into my env file. I'm going to find the database URL, which already had that thing there. So I just need to uncomment it on the other one and comment it out. So, and then I can bring this back. And effectively, I'll show you exactly what I did on the other side. I did this, and I did this. And that's all there was to it. So that should, in theory, give us a setup. Oh, looks like we are running this without debug on the web setup, so I got to switch that back over too. So 1 second. So back in the env file, the debug is set to off. I want that to be on. And I don't think we need the debug toolbar, but we'll leave that. Then we'll come back here. Okay. So I was doing some testing last time that had that off. So now we should be able to stop this. The unfortunate thing is, like, I don't know that the web will, it might be a bit of a race condition. Thankfully, the Postgres will hopefully start faster. Yeah, this is not a perfect setup here, but it might be close enough. Okay, so database was able to get going. We've got this running now on localhost. We should, with any luck, be able to go to port 8000 and see something. See a website that doesn't blow up in our face. It might, though. It might say, like, hey, there's no database table, which would not be unrealistic. Connection refused. Is the server running on that host and accepting blah, 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 blah. Okay. Fine, fine, fine. Another thing we could do, hold on. If these are talking, if these are meant to talk over the same Docker compose, that might be the problem. Trying to think. So this is on its own network here. I really thought I set this up so that it would just pure copy paste, but maybe not. So Docker compose is running with the database. Oh, you know what it was? My old version of the Docker compose, it didn't actually have this web section, so I was never intending it to run with the web version. So that's why this is not working right. So let's do this. Let's stop this for a moment, and let's actually take the web setup, turn that off completely. So it's just a database now. And that will allow us to, with confidence, say that the database is going to be up and running. Now we've got the database running. And it should be running accessibly on localhost, bank. Like, we've done the port map here. This is important. So in fact, we could do docker ps to see what images are running. And you can see over here that the Postgres image that we started 3 minutes ago is running on port 5432 over the broadcast address. So it should be accessible. So now if we go over and run our app locally, we've got it here. The web should be running, and return to this page. I hope we don't get a connection error. We still get a connection error. What is it going on? Oh, now, but look though, it's not it says my local DB does not exist. So what did I have in that connection string, I wonder? It's like here it's my local DB. That's not right. I don't know what the database is for the default image. It might be called just Postgres. Why did I not leave it copied exactly as I had it? You know, it could be, I maybe last time I did this testing, pulled down from Heroku and it had a different database name. It didn't match this up. So I think this is supposed to be Postgres. I think it's like a Postgres named database, or a database named Postgres with a user named Postgres with a password named Postgres. If that's what you, it's like the protocol, the username, the password, the database. So let's try it again. Now that all that's going. Yeah, oh, that's only an example though. That's not going to work. Ooey. I'm gonna do that same edit in my env file. Sorry for jumping back and forth. I know that's annoying. I wish there's a way that I could show this, but I can't really without uncovering a bunch of variables that I don't want to show. And I almost hit scene and had to rotate some stuff. This stuff is always tricky. Okay. So now what I did over there, just so you're clear, is I did this change where it's now pointing at Postgres. So I'm going to start it up, hopefully for the final time. And with any luck, it just says like, hey, those database tables aren't there, that it actually does connect. Okay, great. Cool. So now we're connecting to a real Postgres database, but the tables aren't there. Which was very, very understandable because we have not done anything with them. So we can do uv run manage migrate, and that should do all of the migrations that I have against the Postgres database that's up in that Docker container. The challenge with this is, and maybe this is foolish on my part, is I don't have any kind of volume mount for the database. So if this dies for any reason, I think we lose all our data. So we'll just be careful not to kill that thing, which would be sad. Okay, so that's now done. Now we should be able to start this up, and we'll come back over here, and finally we should get a page if everything's working right. The problem is we don't have any user account at all, and yeah. So we need to make a test account here and start populating some data before we get anything out of the Postgres database. So let's log in. Let's do, not log in, let's do free trial, I guess. Oh, boo. The feature flags for this are disabled, so that sign up is disabled by default. This is not how my real website is. It's like not blocked on that front, but so what we need to do, I guess, to start then, is we need to create a super user that we can go mess around with the admin. So we're going to do manage, and then we'll do create super user. And so this will complain about some stuff, apparently. We don't have Stripe set up, so I'm not surprised there. And we'll say that the super user is me, so we'll say Matt, and that'll be matt@testing.com. And I'll use my password that I use frequently over and over again. Now we should be able to finally run this and go to the admin. The admin for this particular website is on /office. I didn't want to make it too obvious that that was the admin, but I don't mind sharing it here because it's in the source code, and the source code is public. Just don't want to make it accessible to little script kiddies. So now we can log in with the name and password, and here we are. I don't actually like the dark theme, so let's turn that back to the light theme. So now what we need to do is we need to turn on sign up, and we've got the sign up flag here. Let's go in here and enable it for everyone. That should be all that's needed to then essentially go to the login page, which we could do in a incognito, say localhost at port 8000, now we're here. Okay, so we're in this private browser. We can do, well, you know what? We don't need a private browser. That's just going to be annoying to deal with back and forth. So let's log out of here. We know that the free trial page now works. Let's go in somewhere else. Nope, don't want to log in from the Django admin. I want to log in over here. And I suppose I could be creating this data from the admin user account. I just don't want to. So we've got the sign up here. We've got Matt at test. Nope, that one's already used. Test@testing.com. And we'll use password there. And it's sent this email, and oh, that would seem bad, right? But it's okay because the test configuration is set up to dump all emails out to the console. So here we have the link that we want to use. And so let me move this out of the way so I can highlight the whole thing. I want to copy everything inside the quotes here. Copy that, go back to the browser, and come up here and paste that in. So I've confirmed that. I don't know why it didn't log me in. That was a little strange. So maybe it's just okay. Whatever. I've got some work, something to do with the experience here. I thought that would have automatically logged me in. Not cool. But here we are. So the app starts with, wow, that is not starting with the starting experience that I expected it to. Something is wrong with the app. I'm going to make a note here. And I wanted to come back to this later, but I'm going to forget now if I don't do this. We will go to the issue section and log in. Let's say the sign up experience seems broken. There's a whole start sequence. The login did not seem to enter the start sequence. Maybe something changed. What should have happened is when you get the confirmation email, it should have sent you right to a start page, which guides you through the setup. And I know we're not going into the details of how this app works today, but if you're that's kind of jarring and that's not intended. And I guess it's still on me that it's crappy, but that's what it is. So it's supposed to come to here, which will walk you through the different steps of creating this. And I wanted to come here because it's a really easy way to set up the right data and introduce y'all to what this site does. So we're going to create a school desk setup. So we start the setup, and we start by creating a year. So this app's been up since 2020, so the placeholders are getting old now. But I should be able to say this school year is going to run from 9/1/2024 to 6/1/2025. Create that school year. And then we'll move on and we'll create a grade level. We'll call it 6th grade. I don't know why it's prompting me to save that in 1Password. So there's something that I could optimize later. Find some way to make that not care. So we've got a grade, and then we'll have within the grade needs to be some kind of course. So we'll have just a math class, not a mat. Come on, Matt. Math. I'm so used to typing my own name, I guess. And let's see. Learn about graphing. Something that you do in math class, algebra. Learn about the coordinate system. Probably a crappy task, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. So now we've got a school year with single grade on it. And this grade has one task in it, and we can add some more tasks and stuff like that. I'm going to add a couple things and say calculus textbook. Fake details here. Well, I'm just kind of like poking at this with some little attributes that we can add to this to have more than one task. So another task. That way, when we get down to having the PG dump, the database dump out of here, we can actually look at something and be like, oh, that was something we saw. So we'll add another task here. We'll do is graded because that'll do a foreign key. We don't need to replicate this. So that one's going to have an assignment attached to it. We can go back. Well, we need a student. So we'll say Mark, my son's name. Add him as a student, and then enroll Mark in 6th grade. Sure. So now we've got a student enrolled in the grade for the year. And coming back to this, we could add, let's just add like one more course. So let's say English has all these normal attributes here. We'll add the course. Okay, maybe that's as far as we need to go. There's enough data here that come to this, and you can see that Mark has some school that can start. This is what the app does. It's a scheduling software that essentially you set up all of the school details of all the courses and stuff, and it automatically generates a schedule for you of like whatever's the you can think of it like multiple queues that each course gets, like there's slots filled in here with every task that's there. And this is what we use in my family to actually run homeschool. So we've got enough data at this point to be able to get some kind of information out with some various tools. And I don't remember, Django itself might have commands for this. I can't recall. So let's actually stop the web server. I don't think we need to do anything else on the web app itself until later, because where we want to go with this, ideally, what I want to be able to do is, I said that we need to get to that point where we have a Postgres database dump. And from that dump file, we want to be able to convert that into a SQLite database. And then we want to be able to reconfigure the app to point at that SQLite database and then compare and see, like, is the data still the same? Because that's going to be really important coming out the other side to make sure that that matches up. Actually, now that I think about that, I wanted to check out one more thing before we move on, because some of these identifiers, I think these identifiers should be like task 1, task 2 kind of stuff. But if we come over here and we go to the school year, we can look at I don't know if you can see it in the bottom there. It's probably hard to see on the stream, but there are hash IDs used. So it says WLM7. That probably corresponds to school year number 1 in the system. So there's things that we can verify later to make sure that those IDs ideally match up too. Because if the IDs don't match up, then I don't know, if somebody has a bookmark for their school year and we suddenly drop that out on them, that would be kind of annoying. Not the end of the world, because their data would be safe, but their URLs might be broken, and that would be irritating. So let's stop from there, and let's see what Django itself provides in terms of utilities that might help us with this process of getting a database dump. So we want to see -h for what are the commands that are there. I want to say that maybe not a core command, but Django extensions might have something, but let's just scan through them quickly and see if there's anything we can see. So there is dump data, but I don't know if that's what we want. I don't know. Let's poke around. Something we can learn together here. This is not an activity that I have to do frequently. Frankly, I've never had to do or never chosen to do any kind of conversion like this. So I'm not sure the best way to go about this. So optimize migration, that one looks new. So some bunch of commands in here that I've seen. I thought I've seen a lot of these commands before, but not some of those. So that's interesting. All right, so let's start with seeing what dump data is. So uv run manage dump data -h. And okay, so we've got output the contents of the database as a fixture of the given format. Oh, okay. So this is saying, this is using, instead of using like a native PG dump, this is actually using this in a native Django format, which I hadn't considered as an option, but depending on how it looks, maybe that's a viable path. Because if it's as simple as dump data and load data, I mean, it's a lot of data, but it's not a bad strategy if it works. Because the nice part is, what is the nice part? One of the nice parts from my perspective is that we don't have to deal with the different database dialects. Part of this conversion process from Postgres to SQLite is that we would have to mess with a dump file and actually like mess with the syntax in there. And there's a chance that we get something wrong in the statements that are included in the dump file. But what happens with this is that it's essentially converting the data into a format that is not specific to Postgres. It's like a generic JSON format. And let's see. Actually, let's see if we can demonstrate this. This would be the easiest path, frankly, and just really a question of, is it going to be so large that it would be annoying? I don't know. That would be one of the unknown aspects of this. But let's try it. So I want to say, what do we need to say? Dump data. Can we just say all? Is there a way to say? Because it looks like it wants to say different models. Unless use output the contents of the database as a fixture. So this fixture is just a fancy name for their JSON file format that has the stuff. Using each model's default manager, unless -- all is specified. Okay, this seems reasonable. -- all. Use Django's base manager to dump all models stored in the database, including those that would otherwise be filtered or modified by a custom manager. Okay, so yeah, I think this is the kind of their way of saying, like, if you need to get around the fact that, like, you might have managers that are, what's a common scenario? A common scenario is maybe you're doing soft deletes. In a system that does soft deletes, you're not actually deleting records from a database table. Instead, you have a column that is a Boolean, like deleted or is deleted. And if it's true, then, or maybe actually thinking about that in the inverse might be helpful. Like active. If it's active, then it's considered still a live record in the database. And the manager might put a filter on that particular column. So you would do, you would want to have a database index on it. And it would do a filter on that column and only filter, it would add a where to the where clause and is active equal true check normally. And that would get you all of your not deleted data versus actually doing a real delete or a hard delete, which really does remove the rows from the table so that they're not accessible anymore. So that's why they're talking about different managers here. So we want the all because we truly want all the data. Now I'm curious about EKs, only dump objects with given primary. Oh, okay, no, that's not it either. So let's try it, see what happens. So UV, whoops, where's my, there we go. UV run manage dump data. Now, is it going to dump to my screen or is it going to tell me specifies file? Let's just try it without, see if it just kind of writes the fixture right here. Oh yeah. Interesting. So we can say instead, there was an out option or an O option, and we'll say all, I'll just call it fixture for now, .json. It's a JSON file. And okay, now we have that. Do I have JQ installed? No? Are you kidding me? Oh man. Well, let's try this. Hopefully it doesn't cause a big ruckus when I do brew install and try and install a big toolchain. It's very useful to have JQ. JQ is if you have any JSON content, like this blob of stuff is really hard to see right now. So JQ is a JSON query parser basically, and lets you do certain queries on whatever JSON you have. It's actually really good for like a chainsaw for like getting the stuff you want to get out of there. But we can say JQ and we give it an expression with the data that we want to look at. And then we give it the file that we want to look at, so the all fixture JSON. And if we do that, it should pretty print our JSON for us. So there you can see we've got stuff in here. It does seem to be sorted. Okay, let's take a, oh, it's actually that dumped out a lot apparently. Hold on. So let's do pipe it through less, see what we get. So it has some logs, some permissions. It is sorted by app, so it's going through auth. If we do, how many lines is that, I wonder? So 4,000 lines just for that tiny table. Like we added 4 rows, but it did add a bunch of other tables and stuff that are there. It added a lot of permissions too. So interestingly, to me, what could we do? And I also want to be writing this process down as we do it too, because there are aspects of this where can't use that because that's actually like user documentation. It's not what I want. So I want to write down like a cloud migration strategy here. Maybe we just use the README section in the README for now. Then we'll delete it later. Yeah, why not? So right here, we want to do cloud migration. And current strategy for migrating the database. So first we want to get the actual production database. So get production database dump. That's one thing. Then the problem is like the strategy that we're doing so far, we're using dump database. We already have the database accessible because we set up Postgres here. So the strategy that I'm about to propose is a little bit circuitous because it's going to take the database dump and then put it back in a Postgres database in a Docker Compose container that can just be essentially like the engine that is like looking at the data. So we need to figure out how to do that. So get a production database dump, feed database dump into Postgres container. And this is part I can't do on stream because I don't want to, it's sensitive data. It's like customer data. I don't want to, that's not something for y'all to see. So once we're there, then we can use, we already did that part. We used uv run manage pi, and we did dump data. I keep writing dump data, and we just want to write it to a particular file. So I called that all fixtures.json. I'll just use that in the notes here just to continue that. And that's going to be a big file. Okay, so the next step that I'm thinking with this process is once we're this far, that's kind of the conversion. I thought that was actually going to be the hard work. And the reason that this is going to work is the Django knows different SQL dialects that it can talk. So it knows how to talk Postgres when you have a Postgres configuration, and it knows how to talk SQLite. So if we have the fixture as a data source that is kind of the logical representation removed from any aspect of a particular database, then in theory, the Postgres driver and the SQL driver, they can do their own thing and they can both work on the dump file. So we want to, at this step 4 here, we want to switch to SQLite as the URL. And what's not clear to me that we're about to find out is, do we need to run migrations? Like, probably. Because otherwise there's not going to be any database tables for this stuff to insert at. So it might go a little weird. Yeah. And then there is the symmetry side of this is there was a load data command, right? UV run. I'm pretty sure there's a load data command. So load data. I also do want to take some time to look at Django extensions in a minute, see if this might not even be the best strategy. There might be other ways to do this. So coming back over here, we want to use UV run, manage, load data. And I'm writing all this stuff down because I want to have a playbook that I can use when it's time to do the migration. Because zooming out for a bit, this migration is going to have to work like this, where essentially I need to introduce into the app an ability to take the app offline and put up a page saying like, hey, we're working on it. We want to do that because I want to have people not be allowed to input any more data into the database. The database needs to flush and be at a steady state. Then what I want to be able to do is do all of this work of converting from Postgres to SQLite and having that SQLite database and putting that up in the final server where this stuff is going to run on DigitalOcean. Once that is done, I need to do some basic sanity checking and validation that it is as we expect. And then from that point, I can move DNS to point from Heroku over to DigitalOcean. There are a bunch of validation steps that I want to do before that final phase. Basically, I'm going to do this process probably multiple times. One time where I can go through this work that we're doing this evening, get the database that I think is going to be close to representative, and then try it out, load it up over there, and poke on it. See, like, does email still work? Is all the configuration right? Because I don't want to have this setup where I'm like basically turning the app off multiple times for the users and having them come and see like, why does he keep going into maintenance? That would be not a great experience. So there's a lot that I can do behind the scenes to validate that this is going to work. And then finally we can, have a big finale moment where it cuts over and then the users can start taking advantage of that. So it's helpful to get all of the stuff done in specific steps, because that process itself could be like a little stressful, frankly, and I don't want to miss steps. That's the important part. It's like my biggest concern is like losing somebody's data in this process, and that would be really sad. That would be a fast way to lose customers. I mean, I guess I'd never truly lose it because I'm not going to be shutting the Postgres side, the Heroku side down right away. So if in the event that something goes catastrophically bad, I can just point the DNS back over to the Heroku site, which will be sitting there and ready to go. So there is always the like abort step, if you will, but that's how I'm thinking about it. So let's look at this with UV run manage and then check out what load data wants. I'm guessing there's probably some symmetry of if there's a -o file, there's probably a -i file or an input file that it wants to accept. And maybe I'm wrong on the name, but okay, no, it's expecting it as a positional argument where we specify the fixture directly. So we need to, at this stage, go and before we run anything, we need to modify this to point to a SQLite database. So what I'm going to do is, so we want to finish this command here. Let's say all fixtures JSON. That's our command. And then I need to go up and I need to go to my env file. I got to put this back on secrets for a minute. So I'm going to the env file and I'm going back to my database URL config stuff and turning off Postgres and turning database URL back on. I'm going to rename the database here though, and I'm going to call it DB migration .SQLite instead, just so that I don't mess with my local testing database and have this as very clear and distinct activities. So over what we're seeing on the other side looks more like this now, where it's DB migration. I'll just leave that up there as a note for us so that we can refer back to it since I can't show you the other file. Okay, so at this stage, I am like 90% confident that it's going to blow up and say, you know what, we don't have those tables, we can't do what you're asking. But let's try it anyway. So let's say load data, all fixture. I apparently named it all fixture, not fixtures. Predictably, it said no such table in the end. So we want to be able to run this and do UV run. Like if I do an ls right now, there is not even, well, I guess there is a DB migration file there. Let's see, what's the size on that file? So it's 0 bytes. There's no bytes in there at the moment, but I did try to create it. But there's been no DDL on there, data definition language, to actually create any tables. So if we do a UV run and we say manage migrate, now that the database URL stuff is pointed at the SQLite file, it should do the migration stuff that we saw initially there that we just did, like saw 20-30 minutes ago when we did this for the Postgres database, and it's running all these migrations and kind of making this symmetrical. If we do that same disk usage statement on this, so at our empty database has 2.1 megabytes. Is that right? How did it get that big? Oh, that's pretty surprising. Maybe there's a bunch more stuff in there than I realized, but 2.1, that seems much bigger than I anticipated. I suppose that some of these migrations had a bunch of stuff in them. I don't know what's up there. Okay, well, no matter. We'll do UV run. Now we'll try and do load data on that all fixture data. And it installed, as you can see, 484 objects from one fixture. Okay, cool. So let's try and run the application now. In fact, it might even work so seamlessly that even my session here may continue to work. So I'm currently logged on as this test user of matt@testing.com, I think I said, or test@testing.com. And if we run make and it's working from that same database, the sessions in the system are backed by a database and not any kind of other information. So if we've migrated it fully over, can I click this? Wow, look at that. That's pretty slick. People didn't even have to log back in again. And so we've got our reports, we've got our school year. It's all there, seems to be. Now, I'm going to have a validation step with this. Is like, there's only so much that a little tiny test setup can do. I'm more wary with, for instance, my family has been using SchoolDesk for years. At this point, there are some completed school years in there. Within a completed school year, I have 2 children. Both of them are in school. So there's 2 grade levels, and within a grade level, over the course of the year, we don't run it necessarily all at once, but there's somewhere in the range of, well, let's just say between 10 and 20. I don't remember exactly how many courses that some run in the first half of the year, some run in the second half. So it's not like my kids are doing, just a ton of activities all the time. But in aggregate, there's that many. And then each of those courses may have, and if it's like a task a day, and the average school year runs over, 30 weeks, something like that, times 5, you can start to see how many tasks are going to be in this math. And so that begins to add up. And so getting that right, getting all the sequencing right and all that sort of stuff is something that I'm going to have to validate against a real data set later. But I'm feeling pretty decent about this approach overall. I think it is simpler than what I was seeking to do before. I mean, I can poke at this. Why don't we take a minute to see what would the other alternative look like? Because this approach does mean that there is a step that I have not covered, and that step is how do we actually take a PG dump, that's the dump file, and then load it into a Postgres container. So that's something that I'll have to resolve later. Just don't feel like working through that right now. But what would have happened instead? So if we instead search for PG dump to SQLite, see what we get. I think there was a couple of tools that were maybe part of that process. So the command itself, if you're looking for it, is pg_dump. It's a utility that comes with Postgres stuff and kind of creates a logical file. So you can see somebody is going into they're SSHing into their host. They're running the pg_dump command, and they got some flags on here that I don't even know. So that's something we would have had to figure out, what flags would we even use. But then this is where stuff gets a little bit like, oh, are you sure we should do this? Because they basically say you have to actually then modify the dump file to change some of these values. So like the Postgres true needs to become a value of T, or false needs to become F. You got to wrap everything in transactions, and I think with the begin and end stuff. So it just, I don't know. I look at this and I'm like, is that what I want to do? It seems a little risky if some of the syntax is off or I mess it up. You know, I could always work from a dump file and try again until I get it right. But the fact that it's not like clear cut makes me a little wary. So let's see, what is this? Is this one even trying? What do they do? They take the dump and then, okay, they've got a Java jar. There's no way I'm installing Java just to try and do a conversion. That doesn't sound worth it either. So I think that leaves me with the strategy that I've gone over. Let's check out one more thing. That is, what were the options that come from Django extensions? So if we look back at the help output again, there's a bunch of commands here. And I knew some of them, I think some of them related to database. Dump script, what is that? So maybe we can take a peek at Django extensions itself, see what they show on their documentation about commands. And do they even have like a global list of commands? I don't know. Oh, the command extensions. So dump script, what are you? You look interesting. Dump script generates a standalone Python script that will populate the database using objects. Advantage of this approach is that easy to understand, more flexible than populating it or using. Oh, okay. Interesting. Huh. I do wonder about, I want to make sure the foreign keys and many fields are still working. So that I'm still like hesitant about some of the fixture data, but I don't know. Actually, we didn't spend much time looking at the fixture file. Let's open it up for a minute, see what we can find. Gross. Gigantic because it's all one big thing. That's not cool. So let's do this. I said that there was JQ, and this could kind of, we can pipe this to less, and you can see it does a nicer formatting here. In fact, if I remember correctly now, there's also the JSON module as a command line utility. Come on. That you might not even, just for pretty printing, I think you can use JSON directly. Where is it? I know this is there. I saw this recently. So it's a cool thing we should go find from Python docs. Is there somebody shared guy, what's his name? Oh, I feel bad. I can't remember his name. Somebody has a site called Python Morsels. The person behind this site, there he is. Trey Hunter. Sorry, Trey. Trey has a message that he posts on X, probably on some automated schedule, but it's like things that you can do with the Python standard library that are like built-in executables. Like, for example, the HTTP server. If you need a quick and easy file server, you can run Python 3, just Python, depending on how you've got this installed, -m http.server, and it turns whatever directory you're in. Jose, welcome. It turns whatever directory you're in into a local file server that you can browse on your stuff. Jose, I'm currently not making anything new. What I'm doing is taking an existing homeschool scheduling project that I have, and my plan is to migrate it from Heroku to a hopefully simpler setup on simpler, cheaper, and faster setup. So if you can believe all that, on DigitalOcean. That's the plan. So we're in the process of figuring out how to do that migration. Anyway, getting back to this thought right here, there is in the JSON module, just like you can execute the module there, there's a pretty printer that I think is inside of this. So here's JSON. You're right. It's not, well, I'll say this, it's not a small endeavor. I don't know if this project is not used by tons of users, so it is in some ways pretty well scoped. But it's still, there's a bunch to consider in that migration path. So part of going over this is to show people, like, what do you have to consider when you think about a cloud migration? I've done a couple of them professionally, and they're tricky. They're certainly tricky. Okay, so, oh, cool, here it is. JSON.tool is the thing that we want to use. So we can do, well, it looks like you had a pipe to that. All right, let's just see how it goes. Let's try what I think we'd want to do. Python 3m JSON.tool, and then let's see if it'll take the fixture file name. What's tricky about them? Well, dealing with downtime, so managing user expectations and like doing it in a way that's not disruptive to your users. They get especially tricky. So I've done some, like I said, I've done one or two of these professionally. That was one where no downtime was permissible because of the healthcare work that we do. And that made it really hard. Thankfully, that constraint is not present on this. I can just throw up a, hey, we're down for this amount of time on this project, and that'd be good enough. I'll still try and do it like in a off hours, kind of late in the day sort of thing. Yeah, that's probably the hardest thing if you have to manage user expectations that way. Oh, cool. So you didn't even need JQ for what we wanted to do. So I gave it the file name, and then that was it. So we can then do, we'll just say all fixture, we'll say formatted. I want to be able to look at this file and check out some aspects of it. So we'll open this up. What I want to find is tasks. So there should be a whole like course task section. So I think it's going to be courses.course task. Yeah. So Jose, you could, that is a, so you're talking, it's a good question. Wouldn't I just needed to copy the database? Yes, if I wanted to leave the compute side where it is. So there's like two layers in a typical migration, and you can think about them differently. And one is a compute migration. Like, what's the server that is actually serving the response to the users? So if you leave your database stationary and you move like which computer is talking to the database and doing the actual compute to serve the requests, that migration is actually, especially if you've containerized yourself, very easy, or it can be very easy. And then the data migration, where you've got stuff that's trying to talk to it, and you need to move this from here to here, that's where it gets trickier. So if you're dealing with a thing where you can allow a downtime, where you can essentially sever the connections, you can say, we're not gonna operate here. We're gonna be temporarily off, and then we can take the database. We can do whatever copying and stuff. We move it over here, and then when we turn the server back on, instead of pointing at the old database, you point to the new one, and that's a way you can do that. If you have to stay up, then it becomes much trickier, because you have to do a game where your stuff is maybe pointed at the old database, and your old database is kind of replicating to a new database, and then you either wait to drain it. Like, there's some strategies here that you can apply to like start routing traffic to the new one, and that is a much trickier problem to do. So the method I'm trying is much more of we're just going to turn it off, and we're going to move the database over. But the difference is that I'm also moving compute at the same time. I want to move the whole system over and stop using Heroku entirely. And in the process, we're converting from using Postgres database into an entirely different database type of SQLite. So that's the complexity of my situation. Johan, I see your comment there. Welcome as well. I do use ChatGPT. I've used it on stream periodically to kind of go over, use it as more of like a coding buddy. I'm not one for using like a GitHub Copilot. Not opposed to it, but I think I'd rather the level of autocomplete they already have from the language servers is probably sufficient for most of what I want. The thought of typing out something and then trying to have it like guess what I want next, most of the time is not what I want to do. I think it would also lead me to a situation where I would grow overly dependent upon that stuff. That's my thinking anyway. All right, so I know we had a couple of tasks in here. I said one of them was graded. Okay, here we go. I was curious about the foreign keys and how I was going to do this. Interestingly, oh, look at that. It has done. So the way I've got this modeled, I don't want to pull up the whole model for this, is that if a task is graded, it gets a separate, in a separate table, an entry that has a foreign key link to it. You can see this is the separate table. It's an item called graded work, and it's foreign key linking back to the course task. What's curious about this that I did not anticipate is that I'm using certain IDs that make it so that it's not actually numeric IDs that we're seeing on the other side. I don't know how it's going to pan out when we try and load this in SQLite, or maybe we can actually go inspect SQLite and see what IDs that it did create. I guess if these are inserted in order, maybe it doesn't matter, but that is very surprising. So this mvndg thing should map to something else in this file, presumably. And nope, come on. mvndg, there it is. Okay, so we've got, see how it's marking that as a primary key? Pretty weird, but it makes, I guess it makes sense, because if we bring up the actual course model, so that's not the way I wanted to go. Course model, there we go. If we go to the course task itself, which is one of the, and again, I'm not going to get all the specifics of this app, so just trust that these things are necessary at this moment. you can see what we've done with the IDs for this model is we're using this hash ID auto field. And that gives, like, in my opinion, nicer URLs. It cannot be guessed. True is the important element here, is that when you use one of these URLs, you can't say, okay, I have ID 42. Let me poke around and see what does ID 43 look like, because they're short hash values. So what it did, interestingly though, to me, is that the fixture dumped this out and said, this is the PK for this. So what I don't know now is, what did that mean for the actual, like, database insertion? Did it mess up SQLite? Because one of the funny things about SQLite is SQLite is totally fine with accepting different data types in certain fields. And what this could have done is it maybe put actual, like, strings as the primary key field, which is not what I would anticipate, but also not shocking, I guess, either. So let's take a look, see what it did. So how are we going to check this out? There's probably a couple ways. Let's start first by looking at the admin and see if that looks, how that looks. So we'll come back over here. We will log out and go to the admin section. And that should be Matt at a certain password that I need to type correctly. And we can look at course tasks. I'll get out of here. And we've got the course that it's in. And here's our first task. The ID is up here. And this, I think, tracks with this tracks with what I would expect to some level. What I don't understand, I'm wondering if this will, like, come back and bite me if I ever needed to change the hash IDs in the future. Because I think, well, okay, we have maybe some data that we can check out and do a before and after comparison. So let's try this out. Let's go to the actual database, and we want to do uv run manage db shell, which should launch us into a SQLite shell. Okay, and I never remember how to use this. Let's try this. I want to see what tables there are. So here's all of our tables. So we are interested in the courses course task table. So let's do select star from that and see what we get. Okay, it looks like it did actually store these IDs not as the hash values, but as the numbers. Okay, I think that's as much as I wanted to check. I was just scared that it was, like, actually going to try and store them as a string value, which would have been not completely surprising, but somewhat surprising. The other thing that I want to confirm about this, now that I'm thinking about it, now that we're here, is what are the settings on that SQLite database? Because there are some modifications that you can make to SQLite to squeeze more out of it, a lot more, in fact. And the biggest one that we can cover is the write-ahead log. So wall is what this is, how you'll see this written often, but it stands for the write-ahead write-ahead log. And this, unfortunately, for reasons of backwards compatibility, is not the default mode of SQLite. I say unfortunately because from everything that I've read, the write-ahead log is superior to the default mode in almost every scenario. And with a fairly simple configuration change, you can start using the write-ahead log instead of the default mode and get a pretty massive performance boost. The other mode I think is called journal mode. Let's see if we can get a benchmark here. So SQLite journal mode versus wall. Works best for smaller transactions. Fine. Performance. Everybody loves a good benchmark, right? Oh, come on. There are definitely somewhere. Well, I'm searching for the wrong word. Let's try benchmark. High performance SQLite. Well, in this, I think I've seen this video. I've not signed up for high performance SQLite, but heard good things about it. It is from, what's his name? Aaron something? Aaron Francis. And he's done a lot of investment into producing a pretty cool course here. I did see, maybe this was open for a time period, or he shared it on YouTube or something like that, and it was like substantial. So I'll share the link here. If you want to go read it on your own, you can learn what it's about there. But I want to say it's maybe not an order of magnitude, but like a just gigantic leap forward to use Redhead, the Redhead log. So the question is, like, how do we make sure that we're configured for that? And because what I don't know is some frameworks might choose when they create a SQLite database to actually go ahead and use that mode. I don't think Django does that though. So I want to see, let's see, Django SQLite wall mode. What settings do we need to add in order to do that? Okay. And these are considered, yeah, here we are. They're considered pragma options. And I don't remember where we see the pragma options. But it looks like maybe we can set them. I don't know. Keep reading through this for a moment. So I'm getting, just by reading this ticket, I'm getting the sense that this is actually not something that is by default. So I sense that the thing we just created probably is using a different mode. Is there, what was the, maybe there's a pragmas. Or pragmas thing here? Or pragmas table? Like I said, I rarely ever come in here, so I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Just kind of scanning through, looking for something. Mode? What if we do mode? Current mode list? No, that's not it. Stats, system, version. No, okay. Let's try ChatGPT. Why not? How do I list the pragmas from SQLite? Okay. Select star from pragma function list. Oh, doesn't complete that. Pragma function list. Whoa, okay. Oh, these aren't even alpha sorted. That's annoying. And it's a much bigger list than I thought. Well, shoot. What is all this stuff? I think we were looking for journal mode. How do I show the journal mode? Oh, you can use a pragma statement. Pragma journal mode. I don't think it. Delete? What is that? Does or is delete the default mode? The rollback journal. Okay. So we want to be able to switch to wall. So if we switch to, so it looks like we do pragma journal mode equal, will it accept lowercase wall? Wall. Now if we go back up and here, so there's a change in like behavior that's going to come out of the database when you do this, and it looks like the wall mode essentially makes a separate file that is the wall file, the write ahead log, and is like kind of batching up changes and then is going to merge them back into the main file. The exact sequence of how that's done is well documented. SQLite does a great job with the documentation, but it's not a process I can explain to you in 30 seconds. But just because of the way it works, it is pretty fast. So we want to have that journal mode and like take advantage of that. So let's see, what are other things that I want to see if there's things that I should have on a SQLite database before I insert a bunch of data in there, and it's gonna, maybe cause me headaches later. Optimal is gonna be everybody's opinion, but I'll try it anyway. Optimal SQLite options. So yeah, because these are going to vary, because SQLite gets used in so many places that you're going to find all sorts of stuff that might have recommendations. Like here we're getting best practices for SQLite performance from Android developers. And there are literally, well, no one truly knows the number, but it's speculated that there are trillions of SQLite databases out there because of it's in virtually every computer on the planet. And so it shows up in Android phones, which is why it would show up here. Let's see what they say. Curiosity. Enable the write ahead log, which we just talked about. Relax the synchronization mode. Every commit uses an fsync to ensure it reaches the disk. Well, that seems sane. Why would I want to turn that off? Yeah, this is when I'm like, I don't want to mess with durability stuff because I'd rather have a slightly slower response for users than possibly lose their data. That would be bad. So no, I'm not going to relax the synchronization mode. Find efficient table schemas. SQLite constructs efficient query plans and data leading to faster data retrieval. Okay, so I don't know that we need to. Some of this will come from Django using IDs that are Django's default mode is to provide integer IDs. So I don't think I need to do that explicitly. We'll just kind of get that for free by using Django. use indices. That's not new. That's like not shocking advice. Okay, so maybe not the best source of information. Perhaps like the minimum thing to do is I will commit to checking offline for other options, and I'll put it like strategy here is so like I guess step 0 is set up the SQLite DB with the DB migrations. Well, actually that was step 5. So maybe what we really need is set SQLite optimizations, like wall mode, like wall journal mode. And I'll write an issue about others that we might want to pursue. And then we know that now that we do need to run the migrations. So we'll say run migration, not as a question, but as an imperative. And then we can load in the data. All right, so the thing we need to check, get rid of this write ahead log line here, is on that cloud migration, we want to say SQLite optimizations. What should we use? How do we add them? Yeah, the optimizing queries part, John, I think I saw that too. I think that was more like, it was saying stuff like use an index. Like, well, yeah, that's good advice. And if you've never heard that before, it's advice you need to hear. But I don't know that it's like directly applicable. I'm looking for like, what are there configuration options that I need that I would be foolish to not have, like the wall mode. That would be a big jump up for performance. And then it's got, so it looks like maybe the options, I don't know if they did this land though. That's what I don't understand. So actually, you know what? Let's stop guessing and let's see what Django itself says they have as options for SQLite. Go over here and search for SQLite. They probably have a whole database reference section. Okay. So Django supports SQLite blah. SQLite's good. SQLite has some limitations. There's decimal handling. You've got databases locked. That can happen, especially if you don't. So one of the other benefits of the write-ahead log is I think it makes it easier to deal with higher levels of concurrency because of how it writes, I think. Again, you need to investigate that. Transaction mode. The default is deferred. If you want to use immediate and exclusive, do that stuff. Make sure your transactions wait until timeout before raising database as locked. Change the mode to immediate. For the best performance with immediate and exclusive, transactions should be as short as possible. This might be hard to guarantee if you're using atomic requests. So atomic requests, if you've never seen that, is like your whole view, the entire request response lifecycle is wrapped in one big transaction. So it either all happens or it doesn't. I tend not to use that feature just because I don't choose to. Don't want to take that performance hit. I'd rather deal with the Fallout, maybe I just haven't learned a hard lesson in life. I don't know. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Isolation. Enable a JSON extension? Interesting. To use a JSON field, we have to enable something on Python's JSON SQLite 3. That's wild. Okay, here we go. Pragma options. Hey, look, it's brand new. Brand spanking new. So we can do options, init command, and then we can pass in pragmas. I don't know what these pragmas are, but that's cool. So there is an init command. I wonder if, like, do we have to set the pragma every time? I thought it got, like, saved in the file. All right, let's check this. So we have set the wall mode. That should save it to the file. Like, if we quit out of here, I don't know if that's the best way to end that program. But come back and now do pragma journal mode. I expect to see the write-ahead log. Good. Okay. So I don't know why you'd want to have an init command. Like, is that every time it starts up or every time you connect to it? Maybe, I guess that doesn't hurt to, like, set, like, overwrite the journal mode each time. We could put that option in there. That'd be fine. Okay, but let's take this little item here and we'll tack it on at the end here. And I still need over on this stuff. So we know how to add them. Nope, that's not the right link. Come on, I thought I copied the link. Did I not? Okay, didn't. Copy, append. Okay, there's the right link. So over here we've got that. So really we want, and this answers the how do we add them question. We've got what should we use, how do we add them, and then we know we want the wall mode. I don't know if we want anything else. Phooey. Can you do multiple indentations? How far do you have to go in? There we go. And anything else? I don't know. Cool. So now, where are we? We haven't really, like, I guess we have not. What do we do? We did this, we learned the process, right? So actually, let's go ahead and mark it as, like, done. I feel like that's enough, right? We've got, well, let's make sure we oh, here we go. So now you can see what the wall mode does. So it creates this SHM, the shared memory. The shared memory. Oh man, there's some cool stuff about this. I remember. I think there's, like, a synchronization ability that is using. So if you have, like, multiple processes that are trying to, like, multiple readers or writers that are trying to figure out if they can write to the wall mode, I think they use this shared memory file to indicate who has locks over a certain situation. And then the actual data goes in the wall file. And then periodically that data then gets written back durably into the SQLite 3 database itself. For our purposes, we don't need any of these files anymore. In fact, we definitely don't want to keep them. But let's take a quick look at things that we modified. Let's change them back to other stuff. So go back to our env example. We don't need to keep -migration here. We'll refer back to our db SQLite file that already exists. We will keep this as the Postgres thing, pointing to this right table. I feel like that's going to be useful for our loading purposes later. You can undo that change and go ahead and comment that out. Let's just return that to where it was. And then what's left? What? Thought I saved. Did I not save that? Save. Okay, so that one line. Then we've got the cloud migration stuff. Cool. So there's two files that we're updating here. Let's remove this all fixture stuff. And we want to remove all the DB migration stuff as well. Remove DB migration star. So we're cleaned up, and we've got a plan for how we're going to migrate. I think it may also be telling if the data dump file that I end up creating ends up being too big. I can't imagine it would be. It's just might just take longer. Well, I'll have to experiment, and this is part that like I said, the actual customer data is like sensitive, and I don't want to do that on stream, just out of safety of not sharing somebody else's data. But I'll try that offline and then be able to report back on how that went. So we have now add strategy for migrating from Postgres to SQLite. That fixes, well, it's not a branch, it doesn't truly matter. Fixes 1207 from my point of view. It's like we've got a plan. And we can push that up to the cloud migration branch and go ahead and mark this guy done. What else is there? Okay, so I'm specifically going to hold off on this cron jobs thing. The tool I want to use for deployment, and we've talked about it, we had a couple streams on it, and the interesting part is, where is it? So I did a couple of streams putting this whole demo together where we did Kamal. We got a server running. In fact, it's still running. I haven't turned it off because I'm on a free DigitalOcean for 60 days, so I just have been too lazy to turn it off. That's been on me. But what we did with this is we used Kamal, and we used Kamal as it exists today, which is version 1. But Kamal itself, let's see, can I find it? Nope. Kamal, GitHub, Basecamp, I think. Kamal is really close to releasing a version 2 of this. Oh, maybe even, wow. Did they do it? Oh, look at that. 7 hours ago. Hot off the presses. Relatively. Let's see if they have the website up to date. Version 2. Oh, cool. Well, this is what I was waiting for. They changed some of the configuration, and they changed some of the tools that, frankly, that they're running with. Kamal version 1 was using traffic as a reverse proxy. Traffic, TR, and it's always a funny one to spell. It's not TRAEFIK is the name of the tool, which is a reverse proxy tool. And it kind of sits in front of your app. And the reason that they had that proxy in place was to allow for zero downtime deployment. So the idea behind Kamal is you have you build stuff with your Docker containers. You've got a Docker registry, and you push container images up to the registry. And when you're ready to deploy, your machine sitting out somewhere pulls down the latest version from the registry that you've pushed up from either a CI process or some local build process. And then it tries to pull it down and make sure it starts up. and then it was using traffic to cut over from one thing to the other with some trickery that's built into traffic. And for reasons I don't know all the rationale behind, I think some of it had to do with that trickery that I just mentioned. The folks at Basecamp decided, you know what, we don't need traffic. It's doing a different job that is overkill for what we need, and we actually want to use a tool that we're going to write, and that tool is called, maybe not very creatively, but very practically, is called Kamal Proxy. So they've swapped out traffic with this Kamal Proxy tool, which is a proxy that's written in Go that does kind of, it's like purpose built to work as part of Kamal. And I'm excited for this thing, partly because I think it also has, it's made some of the problems that were going to be a little trickier with Kamal 1.0 very, very easy. Namely, the biggest thing is getting Let's Encrypt certificates. Appears to be, as from what I can tell from the configuration, as simple as saying like true on a certain field. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Here's the proxy settings. So there's a host setting, but here it is. So you set this to true, and then assuming you actually own the host and your app is being served through that particular host name and can go with Let's Encrypt, then you get a certificate with like no work, which is awesome. So that is what I would like to use, and I was waiting for. I've been like watching it the last week or two, waiting for the release to come out. It looks like it is ready. Maybe it's still pending a big announcement from David Heinemeier Hansson, but as far as I can tell, it's ready for the limelight. So I was waiting to see if there's anything that had changed about cron configuration or just all this sort of stuff. But I won't. What I'm not going to do this time is we're not going to read through the Kamal documentation again. We'll save that. I'll save that for doing it offline, making sure that I understand it, and then we can actually, using Kamal 2, initialize the homeschool application, the school desk application, with the templating that comes out of Kamal 2, versus now what I've got with my Kamal demo over here is already, frankly, it's already dated information, which is, it's, you know, internet moves fast, right? So it was worthwhile. The core concepts remain the same, but the config is moving to something different. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with some other kind of minor things. There's a Wheezy print thing that we could figure out with container, but I think frankly that's probably good enough for today. So what do we export? I mean, if we think back, we talked about a whole database migration, moving from Postgres to SQLite, and found a pretty viable path using built-in Django dump and load commands, so we don't have to manually manipulate PG dump files. So I think that's a really promising path for this migration, and sets up in the right place. And I think with that, I'll call it a night here tonight. So if you do me a favor, leave a like. Or does all this stuff still work? What is? I think I have some. Yeah, cool. There you go. Fireworks. So if you would leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't. If you want to check out my stuff, I've got a website and books and things. There's ways you can support me on Patreon or send super stickers and thanks here on YouTube. There's memberships, a bunch of places. I also have the services that I'm building that you're welcome to try out. There's Journey Inbox is the journaling one. It's an email journaling service. You can go read about it. So if you want to get something of value, I think, then you can do that. And that's that. Jose, what do I have to do left? I have so now we have with the school desk stuff, we have a Docker image that I think is mostly ready to go. We spent the last couple of weeks doing that. And what I need to do is set up the Kamal configuration, set up some DigitalOcean stuff, and then kind of get configuration and start setting that new site up to look like the Heroku site, making sure that the config matches and everything is happy. There will be some tweaking in terms of certain Django attributes that need to be set differently, like allowed hosts and various things. But getting that into place, and then we can finally get close to doing the actual cutover. So, but kind of out of gas. Had like a longer weekend. It's been sort of gloomy, so not feeling super energetic today. So I think it's a good enough place to call it quits for the evening. I want to say thank you all for joining in. Hopefully, got something out of the stream this evening, and I'll see you next time. Take care.